Okay, we're here for the Realizing the Benefits of ATSC 3 Next Generation Broadcasting. I'm Lynn Claudy with NAB, and I have panelists Madeline Nolan, who's the president of ATSC, and Mike Schmidt, an ATSC 3 technologist with Heartland Video Systems, who also has an exhibit right down the hall here. So we're going to break this up kind of into three sections. I'm going to talk about why, if we started ATSC 3 in 2017, and why hasn't it gone farther than it has, and why is it so hard? And then we're going to get to the benefits part of the presentation, which is Madeline will talk about what are the features and what are the actual benefits of ATSC 3 compared to what we have now in ATSC 1 or normal DTV broadcasting. And then Mike Schmidt is going to talk about how do you get there from here. We have lighthouses on the air, but most stations are not on the air in ATSC 3, and many of them probably aren't sure where to start. So that's kind of our plan for the next 45 minutes. And so I'm going to start with just some intro stuff that says, well, why is this so hard? And in a word, the challenge of ATSC 3 is difficult because of spectrum. Or in more than one word, lack of spectrum. This is different than the DTV transition. I'll show you one chart. I promise only one chart. These are the number of stations by year. And you can see since about 2010, we've been pretty constant at somewhere between 1,700 and 1,800 stations in the U.S. But the amount of spectrum that broadcasters are allocated for broadcasting has gone steadily down over the years from auctions and from the repacking that took place in 2020 or was completed in 2020. So it's totally different than when we had the DTV transition. And during that transition, we had enough spectrum, 67 channels worth, that you could assign each television station two channels, one that was analog and one that was digital. And so as interest in digital increased, eventually you could get rid of the analog station. And from a consumer point of view, it was a very good way to do that. Very little disruption, only extra benefit when you went to DTV. We can't do that. With only 36 channels now available to broadcasting, we have had to go, at least to get started, with a whole different concept of how to make a transition, and that transition is called channel sharing. Channel sharing is really easy. As a simple example, here's a green station and a red station, and each of those stations has an HD signal, and they have a couple of diginets. And in channel sharing, you just put the red programming on the green channel, along with the green channel, and that frees up the red channel there for new services from ATSC 3. Because remember, ATSC 3 is not compatible in any way. It's not compatible with ATSC 1. So you can't mix and match them on a station. But you can do this channel sharing thing. So when you get to a real market, it gets pretty complicated. This is the market I'm familiar with since I live in Washington, D.C. These were all the channels and all the assignments for NBC, Fox, ABC, CBS, and PBS when the ATSC 3 Lighthouse was launched. And it was pretty simple. The programming from WHUT was moved over to WJLA, kind of like that. And then WHUT became an ATSC 3 transmitter. And on that transmitter, we put all the other stations, all the major networks on there. So you had Channel 4, Channel 5, Channel 7, Channel 9, Channel 32, which are all the major networks, and PBS. So that is called a lighthouse station, and it works real good, except for the fact that each one of those stations now only gets 20% of the data capacity of the channel. So it's more efficient, but you've only got 1/5 of what you really could do if you were the only occupant of that TV channel. So that's a real disadvantage. And that means you can't do really compelling programming. 4K is kind of not a starter. And in Washington, you can't add more lighthouses. This is typical of many cities because there's just so much programming already on the broadcast channel. So finding another station where you could offload their ATSC 1 programming onto another channel, it's just not going to happen. We have, however, been very successful at this lighthouse kind of organization. You'll probably see this slide again, but there are something like 80 markets, depending on how you count them, in the country. It's coverage of over 75% of U.S. households. Over 100 of these host lighthouse stations and over 400 actual programming channels on there. And we've got 19 out of the 20 top markets are on the air. So it's been a very good way to start the transition, but it's very difficult to continue the transition that way. A lot of, especially small market stations, don't have enough spectrum allocated, enough broadcast channels allocated, or they're hemmed in by interference. They're not going to have a lighthouse ever. It's just not practical. So a lot of the low-hanging fruit is gone now, and we need a way to continue the transition. So it poses the question, if it's in many places not practical to add more lighthouses, and if the bandwidth that's allocated to each station is limiting what you can do in ATSC 3 to make it a great experience for consumers, and if operating ATSC 1 and ATSC 3 is kind of it's really inefficient from many points of view, then how can you get more ATSC 3 stations and have them online with compelling and innovative services in the marketplace? And the answer that you necessarily come to when you run through this is you got to get rid of ATSC 1. It's time to complete the transition. At least that's the way we've been looking at it. A couple of years ago, NAB and the FCC announced the Future of Television initiative to take on exactly this question of, if you're going to turn off ATSC 1 and go all ATSC 3, how do you do that in an organized and structured way, especially so that consumers aren't disenfranchised or confused by what you're doing? And that Future of Initiative process ran its course. They set up 3 working groups and met for a full year from June 23 to June 24. They talked about backwards compatibility. They talked about how to complete the transition, and they talked about how do you regulate broadcasting after you have an all ATSC 3 world. So there was a final report that came out of that in January of this year. Everybody put in their view on that. However, as you might imagine, it's kind of hard to get people to agree. The manufacturers don't agree with the cable people, who don't agree with the broadcasters about how you do this transition and how fast and all the details. So that all resulted in NAB submitting a petition for rulemaking to the regulator, to the Federal Communications Commission, in February of this year. And we asked for a lot of things. We said, well, let's do the date certain thing. Phase it in, top 55 markets by a date certain. We picked February 2028. Get everyone else to go on February of 2030, but with recognition that small stations and some public stations may not be able to work with that schedule, and not to burden translators and LPTV with this kind of cutoff date. And to update the existing requirement, all TVs now, if you want to call them a television set, have to have a DTV tuner in them. We think that ought to be updated. If you're going to have ATSC 3 as a valid broadcast signal, they ought to be able to receive ATSC 3 signals as well. And we also ask for a prominence requirement. If any of you or your significant others or your family members have struggled with the TV set to find broadcast TV, you are not alone. It's kind of a difficult maze to get through some of the menus and things to find how to get TV through an antenna these days. Other countries are starting to have these prominence requirements, and we think the U.S. should as well, to be only one click away or have some simple way of letting consumers not have to think about it too much to get television as they know and love it. You also have to update the carriage rules. ATSC has been working for a couple of years now on a recommended practice for redistribution of ATSC 3 signals through other outlets. You're likely to hear something about that in the next few weeks. That recommended practice is in the final approval process. I don't think I'm breaking any rules by saying that. So the carriage is an issue. And we also ask that they end this substantially similar mandate that most people don't understand. But right now, whatever you put on your ATSC 3 station on this lighthouse, that programming, that content has to also air on your ATSC 1 channel. So you cannot diversify programming. You can show it in 4K or with different camera angles, but if you're carrying the ball game in ATSC 3, you got to carry the ball game in ATSC 1. So that we think needs to end. We need content diversification to sell ATSC 3, and that is separate than do you still have to transmit ATSC 1 and ATSC 3 at the same time. That's called the simulcast rule. It's related to, but not the same as, the substantially similar rule. So I'm boring you with legal details there, but it makes a difference. So current status, the FCC collected public comments on the NEB petition this spring. As expected, different industry segments expressed euphemistically what I call a variety of views. And now, October 8th, a notice of proposed rulemaking was released by the Commission. Yes, they are still working during the government shutdown. They have scheduled a October 28th open meeting to adopt this notice of proposed rulemaking. And all the questions that come up in the petition for rulemaking, I mean, they have their own opinions about the way this should go, but all the questions that are in the original petition are on the table, so it's off to the races. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Madeline, and she's going to tell you about how great ATSC 3 is. It's even greater than you might think it is. So, Madeline, over to you.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Yeah, I get paid to say that ATSC 3 is great, but, I'm super glad to be here at the NAB show because this is so much more of the content side than the engineering side, for example, compared with the show in Las Vegas. And the content side is where it's all at. This is why the substantially similar rule is a problem in the sense that it doesn't really give the content creators the most opportunity to do something really fun and special with ATSC 3.0 and sell it to their advertisers, which is also what it's all about for the commercial stations. So first of all, who is ATSC? ATSC is not a lobbying organization. We are a group of engineers. We create the standard together. It's a consensus-driven effort. And I would say that all the constituents that Lynn mentioned had a hand in creating ATSC 3. So we have members from the television making community, the broadcaster community, the vendor community, cable and satellite. Everybody was at the table reaching consensus about what this product should be and what it should look like. So we have a lot of consensus on what ATSC 3.0 is and what it can do. The questions that Lynn was asking is, well, how do we get from point A to point B? There's some disagreement, but what's interesting, and we heard this at the ATSC NextGen conference last June when CTA was on stage, they said, we love ATSC 3. We have nothing against ATSC 3. Don't want a tuner mandate, but we love ATSC 3. So that's what ATSC is about. We're a consensus-driven organization for developing technologies like this. Key benefits, I'm a little bit talking to the choir, so I'm not going to spend a whole amount of time on this. It is more robust on the physical layer. It is an IP backbone. It is secure. There's better television. Of course, killer app on television is still television. Advanced emergency messaging, and also new business models, which we're hearing a lot about around town. One thing that I want to say about this is that Brazil has just taken ATSC 3.0, and I'm going to get back to that in a little while, but this is the best system on the planet. There is no better broadcast television system than ATSC 3.0 on the planet right now. So a little bit about the physical layer. The more robust, higher capacity has two parts to it. One part is, as you can see, A53, because we're engineers, we don't know how to name documents in any kind of fancy way, so we just call them A53 or whatever. That's ATSC 1.0. And you can see that it sits below this blue line, which is the theoretical limit of how much data you can push through your spectrum at what level of robustness. And you can see that ATSC 1.0 sits well below that blue line, and it's also a single point. You compare that with ATSC 3.0, which is very, very, very close to the theoretical limit of how much data you can push through your spectrum. And if you think bits are bucks, ATSC 3 is for you. It also allows broadcasters to operate all up and down this spectrum, which means that I can have some services that are very high capacity but less robust, perhaps intended for a rooftop antenna. And at the same time, I can have less data capacity but highly robust services, for example, emergency messages or a mobile service. A little bit about the IP backbone. The most important thing is that line right there. It allows for hybrid broadcast broadband services in a brand new way that we've never seen before. If any of you live in a market where there is ATSC 3.0 and you turn on NBC and you see their app running, they have something called Start Over TV. How awesome. I tuned into the channel. The program had started already. Would you like to start the program over again from the beginning? Yes, I would. Suddenly you're in an OTT experience you didn't know and you didn't care, and you want to jump back to live anytime, you can do it. That's part of what this IP backbone is about. The other part is about the new business models. It's not just about linear television anymore. It's about linear television and software downloads and map updates and BPS and eGPS, and if you can deliver it over IP, you can deliver it over ATSC 3. It's a very secure system. We took care of the security from all facets of the system, from the studio to transmitter link, all the way to the broadband connection. And we did this from the very beginning. This was not an afterthought. This was absolutely critical and part of the requirements of the system. I mentioned better TV. By that, I mean ultra-high definition, HDR, wide color gamut, better audio, improved accessibility, rich emergency messages that are geo-targeted, and interactive features. Actually, that guy, Josh, is nodding. He knows what that is. That is the NBC app. That pops up when I start watching NFL football and said, did you miss the beginning of the game? Would you like to start over again? Yes, please. So that's exactly what major networks are doing with this system today. I'm going to take you around the world a little bit. I know this is not so key to this group, but it illustrates what I was saying before about this being the best in the world. South Korea launched this in 2017. Why 2017? What happened in 2018 in South Korea? Yeah, the Winter Olympics. I see this person nodding. He knows. Big sports drives this stuff. And what South Korea wanted was UHD broadcast for the Winter Olympics, and they got it. So they now have most of the country covered with ATSC 3. Unlike the U.S., they do have a plan for sunsetting ATSC 1. Their plan was to sunset in 2027. I don't know if that date is going to hold, but they have a date. They're shooting for it. Not only are they going to stop ATSC 1, they're going to stop 2K. All broadcast in 4K by 2027. That's their goal. The U.S., Lynn already went over, so I won't go there. Jamaica launched. They're on the air in all 14 parishes there. They need inexpensive receiver devices for their population, so right now they're on the air, but the commercial service hasn't really gone underway. Trinidad and Tobago is launching, and Brazil. I want to talk about Brazil for just a minute. So Brazil did extensive testing on ATSC 3, on advanced ISDBT from Japan, on 5G broadcast, and they even looked at the European DVB-T2 and they opted not to test it. At the end of the day, after years of testing, ATSC 3.0 is the best system, bar none. And they chose it because it has the best throughput, the most robustness, and the most flexibility. It can do MIMO, layer division multiplexing, and if you think that the U.S. broadcasters think bits are bucks, try Brazil. Brazil is going to have the state-of-the-art television broadcast system when they launch. They're already on the air in Rio and Sao Paulo. They'll be on the air in Brasilia later this year. And guess why they want commercial services by 2026? What is happening in the Americas in 2026? Come on, people. FIFA, thank you. And Brazil does not care so much about the Olympics. They sure don't care about the Super Bowl, but man, they live and die by World Cup soccer. So that is their goal, to get what they call DTV Plus on the air in time for FIFA. Their goal is hybrid broadcasting from the beginning. And they have designed this thing from the time you open the box of your new television set. What does it look like? What is the user experience like? Lynn talked about prominence. They have the idea that all of your TV screen is going to be app-based. So you're going to see TV Globo and Record TV and Netflix and Amazon, all app-based. But they have done a beautiful job of marrying the new app-based user interface that young people want with the traditional channel zapping and EPG that traditional viewers want. You can do all of that with this unbelievably gorgeous user interface. And you can go to the EPG in Brazil, and you can have buttons in the EPG that says watch now. So you see something that's airing in a couple of hours that might be available. It's a rerun. Oh, I want to watch that now. Or you can go back in the EPG and say watch now. It's very, very clever what they've done. India, they are interested in only one thing: phones. That's all they want, is direct to mobile. There is a 19-city pilot that's planned. To be 100% clear, they have not decided what kind of technology they're going to use. They're studying ATSC 3.0, 5G broadcast, and they're going through the process of figuring out how they're going to move forward with this. What's most interesting in India is they're not probably looking for a call for proposals for technologies. They are looking for a call for proposals for building the ecosystem. How are you going to get devices in the market? How are we going to pay for transmitters to get on the air? We want a proposal that tells us how we're going to do all that. And whatever technology supports that, fine. So they're thinking about it from the ecosystem building point of view, with the phone as the number one use case. Canada. Man, they care about everything except TV. They really don't care about linear television. And this gets into the data casting piece. What can we do with our IP streams other than linear TV? In Canada, it's all about public service. The city of Calgary is using it for digital signage in the public signs. They're using it for emergency messaging to public spaces, and they're using it for bridging the digital divide to rural Calgarians who need education information. Here are the TV estimate sales from CTA, and this is for the United States. And the estimates as of, I think this might have been January, I can't remember, is that by 2029, 75% of the TVs in the United States sold will have an ATSC 3.0 tuner in it. Now, of course, this was done all before the FCC came out with its proposed rules, so we'll see what happens with all these things. And then, of course, the set-top boxes are getting underway as well. So a little bit about what are we doing with these services. You saw the little bug from NBC. They are doing that. You get UHD video in South Korea, where they happily have a lot of spectrum. You get HDR wide color gamut 1080p here in the United States. And you get NextGen audio in the US as well as in South Korea. And then with the interactivity, South Korea came out with TVBA, which was very popular during the Olympics, and also in the United States with Catch-Up TV, local on-demand programming, and more. These are the things that we can do even within the bandwidth that we have. Even within the substantially similar simulcast rule, we can do these things. So what are the new opportunities? Who's making money doing something else besides TV? Well, we are looking at datacasting, and it's a very, very compelling opportunity and use case. People believe that ATSC 3.0 is the most efficient way to get a large package of data to many, many devices. It has infinite scalability within the reach of a transmitter. It doesn't matter how many devices are out there. And certainly people see an opportunity for business there. You want to update all the Xboxes? We can do that. The other is GPS enhancements. There's something called BPS, which is the notion that we can help replace the signal if something was to happen to the precision navigation and timing of our GPS system. And then there's something called eGPS, not to be confused, different. BPS, one thing, eGPS, something else. eGPS assumes the GPS system is up and running, but what we want is more accuracy. And so eGPS gets you from roughly, a 3 or so to 10 meter plus or minus. If you're trying to land a drone on a dime, it's going to probably miss by a pretty wide margin. With eGPS, you can land the drone on the dime. It's about within a 10 centimeter plus or minus landing platform. So it kind of takes the concept of RTK, which is a cellular technology, and it brings it to broadcast. South Korea, they're making money doing this today. A company called MBC, M as in Madeline, not N as in national. MBC has sold thousands of receivers and thousands of licenses and has about 100 transmitters in the country up and running doing eGPS for agriculture use cases, drone use cases, and many more. New TV station revenue. Why don't we do targeted advertising? Why don't we do targeted advertising? We can do that today with the spectrum we have. We can do targeted advertising. I think the footprint's not big enough, that's why. But at least we know what the business model is, because we know what targeted advertising can do from our digital platforms as well as from zone segmentation in the cable world. This we can do. There's other opportunities. There's new ads. How about if I click on NBC and I say I want to start it over and I get a 5-second pre-roll? Why aren't we doing that? We should do that. It's just like YouTube. 5-second pre-roll. You get 3, 2, 1, skip. And then you're in. So it's new inventory. Or you come up with the L bar that says, hey, here's the local here's some national stuff and on-demand stuff sponsored by Ford. We could do that. So there are these opportunities that we can take advantage of. And then, as I mentioned, the smart city infrastructure that Calgary's doing. What a great public service. What a great way to serve the communities that the broadcasters are here to serve. A little bit more about ATSC. If you're not a member, be a member. Sorry, Lynn, my pitch. I get paid to say that. And there's obviously a lot more information available. We have a newsletter available for the low price of free, and it only comes once a month. We promise we won't spam you. We promise we won't sell or rent your email address, and it will keep you up to date on everything that's going on in the ATSC 3 community. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to someone who actually knows how to make this stuff go. I'll turn it over to Mike, but I think, Lynn, you wanted one more thing first.
Just one little interstitial ad before we move on to Mike Schmidt. All the features of ATSC don't mean anything if the content people don't get involved. So I wanted to tell you about very quickly a program that NAB is involved with through our pilot technology program, and a grant that came from the Knight Foundation to work with the news community to find innovative ways to get news product out there using ATSC 3. So we've established this NextGen TV News Lab very recently, and this runs for 3 years, to leverage ATSC 3 and to improve journalism, to improve storytelling, to get people more engaged, and to do that at our lab in Washington D.C. and then to proliferate that out to the stations. So we have 2 projects running now. Eventually there will be 6, but both Graham Media and Sinclair are working with us, one on a weather interactive application, and Sinclair working with us on an emergency alerting application. So if you're interested in that, if you're a station group out there and want to be a part of this project, John Clark, who is somewhere in the back here, Executive Director of NAB Pilot, would love to talk to you. He's jclark@nabpilot.org. So now back to our regularly scheduled programming, and Mike Schmidt.
Thank you, Lynn. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Schmidt from Heartland Video Systems. I've been working in ATSC 3 for about 5 years. We've launched about 70 markets where we're the primary integrator and designer, and supported another 30. So we have a fair amount of experience. We've launched about 70 markets where we're the primary integrator and designer, and supported another 30. So we have a fair amount of experience in what it takes to do that job. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is really just a transition and what it means for the hundreds of stations that might be in that top 55 markets if this transition mandate comes through. So just a little bit of history. ATSC 1 was approved in 95 and adopted by the FCC in 96. It makes it 30 years old. That's very old in technology terms. Not much in our life probably relies on 30-year-old technology. ATSC 3 was developed and started in 2013 and completed by 2018 at CES. So FCC issued a notice of proposed rulemaking to allow 3.0 broadcasts in February 2017. And in March 2017, we could voluntarily choose to go NextGen. Even though I said I was involved in about 100 markets or 100 launches, the 80 markets launched, there's a couple that have dual or triple lighthouses right now. So that's how that math adds up. I'm not going to go over a lighthouse model. Lynn kind of talked about that, as well as the petition. But it is interesting to note, though, that top 55 markets works out to be about 800 full power TV stations. That's a pretty big amount. And so if we get into the transition plan, what are the pieces that you're going to need to address? There's a 3.0 encoder packager, a signaling server, and a broadcast gateway that typically resides in the studio. There's also an IP-capable STL, whether that's IP, ISP, or microwave. And you also have your ATSC 3.0 exciter transmitter and possibly some antenna work if you have to move to V-polarization. Test equipment for monitoring, at the studio and the transmitter. Also some IRDs and compliance monitoring, enterprise monitoring and control. These are all things you should be thinking about. And in those 70 or so markets that we designed, you can pick the same equipment, but they're not always done the same. It's really a case-by-case basis. Your needs are going to vary. There's a lot of variability and a lot of complexity in ATSC 3, so it makes like a template maybe not work quite as well. And we would recommend that you prioritize everything on lead time. Transmitters are going to be your biggest dollar item and also the longest lead time if you have to replace them. Then your microwave STL, and then finally your air chain at the studio, which is primarily COT servers, and they're pretty readily available. Configuration time on that isn't very impactful. Just a quick drawing of just a real general ATSC 3 system. You've got sources feeding an encoder. The encoder has a dash output. It feeds the signaling server. That has a router MMT output. It feeds a gateway. You get an STLTP multicast out that goes either over microwave or ISP or both and hits your transmitter and out to your viewers. So we're going to start with transmitters, and also you should start with transmitters. Again, the highest dollar item and the one that's going to take the longest. But many of the top 55 markets went through repack and probably have transmitters that are 3.0 capable already. If that's the case, you probably just need a license. You should really talk to your manufacturer and find out where you stand. We think any transmitter replaced in like the last 7 or 8 years is going to be 3.0 capable. So that'll give you an idea of when you maybe should start to worry. And when you do cut over to 3.0, you're going to have to do another proof of performance. your studio to transmitter link, or STL. If you have a microwave STL, it's going to need to be IP capable. You should plan for 35 megabits of capacity, and you should also plan for doing some networking to protect your signal, because you can't drop a packet anymore. It's going to cause your exciter and your transmitters to have a bigger outage than what you'd want. If you have to update your microwave, the good news is you probably don't have to do anything with your dishes and your line, so you don't have any tower work. Just replace the actual radios. And you should really try for full duplex links, although STLTP signal can go over a simplex. It's just desirable for that to be full duplex. So the 3.0 air chain, again, mostly at the studio. But if we talk about an ATSC 3 encoder, what does that mean? It means it has to do HEVC video encoding, AC4 audio encoding. It has to support IMSC1 captioning. It generally happens in the packager. And it has to support a dash output. If you get redundant encoders, which is obviously a good idea, you could run your ATSC1 air chain on one and do your ATSC 3 air chain offline to do all your proofing out, and then cut over your 1.0 to 3.0 after the fact. If you're going to choose a signaling server gateway, what we suggest is you use the same company. Don't intermix them. They should work if you do intermix, but we test everything within the company. So we know that it's going to work. If you start to deviate from that and you're on a tight timeline, you might get some problems. So you just stay safe, keep the same company for both. And also, when you pick a signaling server broadcast gateway, look at some of the other features of ATSC 3 to help you determine what you really need. So data casting, broadcast applications, ESG, advanced emergency information, ModCOD scheme, all these things are things to consider when you make your choice. There's some miscellaneous equipment, test equipment, analyzers are going to be important. This is generally pretty new to everybody. And it's all IP. So having an analyzer that can visually point you to a problem, so you don't have to dig through tables and read them and figure out what might be missing, is going to be a huge boon. 3.0 IRDs, so use them for your master control monitor wall, ATSC 3 RF in, SDI out, just so you can know that everything's working. High stability NTP, PTP servers, Stratum 1, lock to GPS. Also important because timing is much more critical in ATSC 3. You should perhaps look at isolated multicast switches instead of incorporating all the multicast data into your network, especially if you don't have a lot of time. If you have an isolated switch with a couple of static VLANs, you're going to be safe and you're going to work. If you have to incorporate it into your network, history has shown me that's going to potentially cause some problems and delays. Also, get a variety of TVs and set-top devices. Your viewers are going to have any number of things in the field. They don't all react the same. So the more that you can have, the better off you're going to be able to see a problem that your viewers might be seeing. You should also perhaps consider an ATSC 3 lab at a group or network level, because if you want to test any of the advanced features, you don't want to do it on air. You don't want to impact any of the viewers. It's a service that we have at Heartland as well, but it might make sense to look at that lab environment. Compliance monitoring, your old compliance monitoring isn't going to work. There's no more 8VSB, ASI, or transport stream over IP. Everything is going to be, a QAM modulated RF signal. It's going to be route multicast and STLTP multicast. So you have to make sure your compliance monitoring is up to the task. And then enterprise monitoring and control. Maybe as a group, you want one central location where you can monitor everybody, so you don't put so much strain on your local engineering. You can go dig in and start doing troubleshooting from one location. So a good enterprise monitoring control would provide that. Some other considerations, these are above just linear delivery, right? You can put your audio and video up for channels for viewers to see, but there's a lot of other things we can do. Broadcast IP, or BEST, which is a convergence of OTA and OTT, where you send all your high bandwidth over a broadband connection. The viewers don't know the difference, but you pick a CDN for that. And, cost is one thing, but also ease to use and there's a bunch of different considerations there. Broadcast applications, are you going to do that in-house or are you going to outsource it? And most importantly, what do you want it to do? You really should do some planning to think about how you want that. It's a powerful tool. It's a program that can run on the TV. You can make it do anything you want, but you really have to figure that out. Data casting, do you want to do that for revenue? You know, selling off portions of your 6 megahertz carrier? You're going to do it for public service or both? 4K or UHD takes up a lot of bandwidth. OTA may not be the best place for that, but BEST or BIP, where the majority of the bandwidth is set broadband, I think is a great place for that. HDR and advanced audio, you can get encoder licenses to synthesize HDR and Atmos audio. You can also look at making your workflow native HDR and Atmos if you wanted to. Another advanced audio feature that we recently started working with is AI translation of your English audio to any number of foreign languages for SAP audio. It happens in real time, and it's quite accurate. Stat muxing in ATSC 3 is a little bit different than 1.0. It's a little harder to do. Your encoder, which needs a license, works with your signaling server, and you want to make sure, if that's important to you, that you're picking the vendors that will support that. DRM encryption encoders, all of them support that natively, but you have to purchase your licenses from A3SA. And signal signing, which is the certificate insertion, all the signaling servers support it, but you're responsible to buy the certificates from Ianti. And then ModCOD design, that's an important piece of this. It's pretty complex, but it's how you carve up your spectrum to use it. And you should really, I think, give a lot of thought to that. There are some real advanced techniques that maybe not everybody supports, but it certainly sets the what you're going to do going forward. And then just to finish up, a little self-serving, partner with a successful integrator. So we are equipped to meet timelines. We have a procedure in place. We've done it plenty of times. We know how to quickly configure systems and get them sent out. We have help desk, so when there's problems, you can call and we can help remote in and fix things. Customer service, where if you need to talk about how to do new features or change things, we can do that. Most importantly, I think we have a lab where we bring any system in and we set it up on your IP addresses, your configuration. We test it with your exciter into all our tuners, fully document it. When we get it shipped to you, all you do is rack it, power it, cable it, and the exciter signal is already there. It shouldn't have any downtime at all. It should be ready to go right when you get the system. We also work with A3SA to do DRM verification and signal signing verification. And of course, we offer factory training courses at ATSC 3. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
All right. I know we're the last thing before you can get a drink, courtesy of our friends at Cinemedia. But I have 3:59, so I'm going to use the remaining minute to ask a question. And the question is to Mike. Mike, how long does it take from the ground up, starting from zero? How long does it take to spin up an ATSC 3 broadcast chain if from the starting go contract?
That's a good question. There's a couple of answers, but just real quick, it takes us a couple of days to get a system fully functional, but a lot of that is in burn-in testing. What we found in the early days is if we put up a system and we watched it on the TV, watch it for 15 minutes or so, and you think everything looks good, that may not quite be the level of attention to detail that you need. You might have to watch the channels for an hour or so to make sure everything's not getting out of time as it goes. And also there's a lot of monitoring with our test equipment that we can run over the course of like 2 or 3 days to see if things are as stable as they need to be. So the actual work isn't quite as daunting, but we want to do our due diligence and make sure that we test it properly. So 2 to 3 days.
Great. Thank you. Mike and Madeline, I hope, can stick around during the reception here for questions and good conversation. Thank you very much for attending this session.